Do you have any idea how many carpets does India export to the world annually? Data suggests it's over $2 billion, making it one of the most loved part of Indian culture around the world. And to understand if this is a business still worth getting into, I met with Yogesh from Jaipur Rugs.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Looks like a beautiful place.
Thank you. Please come in.
Yeah.
They are the largest exporter of hand-knotted carpets from India and are currently exporting to over 60 countries worldwide. Their designs, concepts, media campaigns, and even prices are so unique that I couldn't help but be absolutely stunned by how much people pay for carpets these days.
These are tapestries from the 15th and the 17th century. These are all handmade, and this would have taken a few years to make. And they're so well built that as long as you keep it nicely, they're meant to last. Obviously, you see it's over the years, there's a lot of damage that has happened to the tapestries, and these little stitches that you see here are just repairs, so that it doesn't fall apart.
Is it fair for me to ask the price, or it's always on request?
If I'm correct, this is, I think, between 85 and 90 lakhs.
Oh, wow.
For this piece. So actually, this was currency. This 20 years ago, you could wholesale for a few crores. But over the last couple of decades, the prices of antiques have come down drastically.
Is it?
Yes. So it's a great time to buy antique carpet because we've not seen prices as low ever.
We sat down at their flagship store in Jaipur, where I asked them about what is their playbook of finding international buyers. Which Indian crafts have a potential in global markets that anyone starting today should focus on building a business in? There is design, consumer insights, navigating US tariffs, and exactly what you need to know to take your business globally. This is Founder's Office with Sarthak Ahuja. What worked for you when you started out? And if you had to advise to a friend today that go to that country, how should they figure out whom to meet, which exhibition to go to? Are there any learnings or like playbook that you can now recommend and say, if someone does this well enough, they have a good chance of getting a buyer?
The first and foremost, which I think is most important and which I think 95% or 99% people don't do, is research. So I think before you walk into a door, you need to understand who they are, right? So typically what we do is we kind of do a research on what they're doing, and then we see, are there products that I can go and say that either these are novelty products that will really value add to their store, or we say, okay, these are products that are similar to what you do and there are higher chances of selling. So I think that research, first of all, I think is very critical before going to a market or meeting somebody, where a client feels you get them, your chances of doing business increases significantly, right?
Correct.
Because they know that they'll say something and you'll understand it very quickly because you understand their design language.
So what you're saying is don't create like a template email that you shoot out to everyone. It has to be tailor-made for every person you're trying to pitch to.
Absolutely. I mean, in an ideal world, you categorize your customers in 2, 5, 10, 20 segments. And some you'll see like color, you'll see like, all that the store is colorful, versus some you'll go, it's all beige and gray, right? Versus some who are only doing traditional, versus some who are completely ultra modern focused.
Correct.
So if you understand that and you pitch those products, immediately that becomes a huge hook to sort of get the customer.
No, that's actually great, because every brand today essentially stands for some story or something that they do which they say is unique to me. So when you today have to say pitch to a new customer, and despite your scale and size, I'm assuming you do continue to pitch to more people. When you do, is there a Jaipur Rugs story that you have seen works and cuts across cultures which you think has been a learning for you? Like, we looked at some carpets that people do who are inmates in jail, right? And people inside of prison, they're actually weaving carpets. And that is a wonderful story because what they create is amazing. And maybe that could really connect with someone that I want to see what is being made in a prison in India and present it here, because it becomes unique. Are there some such stories which you think have been great cultural hooks for people to immediately come and say, cool, let's have this meeting?
Oh, great question. To me, when I started until now, I think the first is the commerce side and then is the story side, right? So the commerce side is that you need to understand that the person sitting in front of you that you're dealing with also is going to sell the product ahead. He's not using it for own use. And can you tell him things on how your product is going to make him more money? So, for that, we have a lot of strategies, right? So we kind of go and tell them that we will make your life very easy by giving you great content, right? We'll give you our best sellers. We'll tell you what is selling in the market. We'll give you that consumer research. We'll do this, we'll do this. When a shop owner hears that, he's like, oh my God, this is all I need. This is like a free consulting agency that's coming to me and also giving me great product. So the pitch becomes very easy. That's the commerce side, right? Where what I'm thinking on how my customer is thinking and what can I do to influence him. The other side, I think, is the story side. And I think to me, the story is always the underlayer, not the top layer, right? Which means that the story and everything else is great to have, but it's not the most important thing to have. Fortunately, we are a business where the story is equally important to us.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of our customers do business with us because of our story. How do you communicate that is the biggest question.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have to be creative. And as I said, with all the noise, how do you cut through it and make a point which sticks to that person that he'll not forget you?
So do you think today, like what you do on social media and the kind of campaigns you do, does that help amplify or kind of help with conversions where the moment you send like an Instagram link or some campaign, they suddenly feel a lot more comfort because they can see the kind of aesthetics you work with, the kind of brands you've collaborated with. Is social media adding value in conversion now, or you've been playing this strategy for a very long time, even when social media didn't really exist?
No, I mean, see, when you're working cross-border, trust is always an issue, right? Because the person sitting and buying from a foreign country doesn't know if he can trust you with his money when you're making a product. And whatever you can do to build that trust is significantly important. So I think a great website, and today's world, I think social media has become equally or more important, right? Because they're judging you by how good your social media is to understand how good of a brand you are. In the B2B world, I think it's a 50-50 today where, like there are great brands who do amazing work, but they're not even on social media, who are completely B2B. So I wouldn't say that it's essential, but I think it's getting more and more important.
Okay.
And I think the most important part here is if you have great content that your consumer can use, right? So, or your customer can use, that really empowers them. And that becomes a great strategy. So not only it's helping you gain trust, but it's giving you credibility to go to your customer and say, see, I have done your work, and you don't have to do a photo shoot in Spain or in France, which will cost you a bomb. I've done it for you in India. Why don't you use my content and sell to your consumers?
Wow, that's actually wonderful. So I'm also thinking that when you started pitching, did you ever feel certain buyers tell you that you are too small for us, and while you have a great story and the product is great, but somehow we're unable to establish trust on your scale and you've not supplied to anyone in our market? When you face any such qualification, are there certain things that you can do commercially or otherwise to kind of build that trust, or then you kind of come back after a few years when you've cracked someone else who's willing to give you a chance?
No, I mean, it's a great question. What we did was we always said that exaggerate everything in front of the customer on what we do, but don't lie.
Yeah.
Right? There's a
So
very
what
thin
kind of
line.
exaggeration? I'd love to know.
That's a difficult one to answer.
Yeah.
But I remember, like when we started, we were not a very big company, and when customers would walk in, and obviously that question of trust, and and there were products that I knew would sell well for him. And, so we would kind of, even if we sold, let's say 100, that time was not a very big number of a product that you were selling. I would still say that we've sold hundreds of these, so that 100 would become hundreds, so that it gives him some confidence to buy the product, right? Sort of saying that this product flies off the shelf very quickly. And those things for the customer work really well. So I think like it's the question of trust, right?
Correct.
And there was a time I remember very well when there was a very large customer from the United States. They have 7 stores. They bought $400,000 worth of goods from us that year. This was 2011-12. It was father and son. The father was sleeping and the son was asking me, why don't you do a selection for us? So how do you get to that point where you tell them that you understand the product so well that they trust you to give the charge of even selecting their product.
Correct.
And I think there's many parts to it. I think it's not, trust doesn't come from just having a great Instagram or having a great website. It comes from telling stories. It comes from showcasing that you have the right partners that you work with. It comes from testimonials. It comes from making sure that your website is suddenly not stop to work, or there are no links that don't work, right? So
Correct.
It's and when you go and meet them, it's the same face with what they see online, right?
And it's not like stock images of white men and suddenly someone from India walks in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So, when people build trust, a lot of times what also happens with newer buyers is they would say that I am willing to keep my inventory with you and you pay me when it sells. So I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is. And I'm saying, okay, I'm willing to take that risk. And that could give someone else incentive to get an in, saying, okay, it doesn't cost me anything if you're willing to do it. Have you done something like this, and has it ever backfired? Because that's a risk that a lot of people feel, that in my attempt to build trust, I don't want to be so foolish that I get bitten back myself. One, has that happened? How has that happened? Are there any learnings around it, that mistakes others can't make?
I mean, I think we should never do that. Because as soon as you start giving free product to a client, then they get in that habit of saying without investment, they can get whatever. I've made this mistake several times.
You have?
Yes. So, we used to send goods for exhibitions. So the goods leave India, go to a Germany or a Paris or whatever. And then we thought that, since the goods are already there, why not give it to one of our customers and say, why don't you keep it for a month or two and then give it back to us? And we tried doing this for a couple of years. We did end up doing some sales, but I think at the end we spoiled these customers. So these customers who would otherwise buy, and now they were dependent on saying that, please just send me goods. And I think it's a tricky territory depending upon what product it is. In our case, the investment is very high when you buy a product, right, in the final goods. If your product is where the shipping cost is so high that bringing back doesn't make so much sense, you rather leave it there and have the customer try, which will make him convert. Maybe I'd do that.
So your products on an average that sell in foreign markets, what would be the average order value or the average price for, say, international markets for a Jaipur Rugs carpet?
So an average rug, let's say more or less, would be between $1,500 to $2,500.
Oh, that's not too much also.
Correct. I mean, then we have $10,000, $20,000 per rug also, but then we have the cheaper ones also.
Okay.
I'm giving you an average.
So average you would say is about $1,500.
Correct.
Okay, a little over a lakh and a half is what your say is. Okay. Now at that kind of price point, you're saying money should be a qualifier, that if a buyer wants to buy from you or do business with you, they should at least pay the money for whatever inventory that they're keeping.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other mistakes that you think you've made while treating or meeting with or trying to convince new customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes we're also very naive. So when in the front somebody's saying that I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to buy this much, and then end of the day, you don't realize that you're actually getting in a trap where they have a history of not paying people, or they essentially. So we've had that many times. Fortunately, the Indian government has a policy called ECGC, right? The Export
Credit Guarantee.
Yeah. So we've made it a standard in our organization that unless we get ECGC, like an insurance, we would not, sort of sell to people. Because
wow. It's like a policy. You won't ship it unless you get ECGC for it?
Correct.
So they're also doing like a risk assessment on your behalf, and
absolutely,
that's what you're really
absolutely
optimizing for. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I also want to understand your design process. So I know there is this Manchaha range, which is essentially Manchaha, and all the weavers are told that whatever you feel like doing, you do, and we'll of course they're given some guidance on colors. Apart from this, is there a scientific process your team follows in terms of how do you evaluate trends? How do you predict which colors are going to be in fashion?
Well, I mean, I think, my perspective on this is that trends is a very wrongly used word, first of all. Whenever we've done research, when people say this is a trend and we do research, we realize it's like less than 1% of the market. So how can it be a trend if it's only 1% of the market, right? Because you're talking about a very special niche. Recently, I was reading a report which said, something on the lines of that this color, is not the most popular color in that country. And I thought, let me check with our data if that is true or not. And I realized that was not true because I was selling that color a lot in that country. This is Turkey with black.
Okay.
So there's a perception that Turkey doesn't buy black carpets, and I mean we happen to sell a lot of black carpets in Turkey. I think that one is seeing what the trend is and saying that okay, somebody is saying that this is a trend and let's follow it, and the other is to create a product which becomes a trend, right? And how do you make a trend? It's not that difficult, to be very honest, because it's saying you take something which exists or you have and making it very cool, that the consumer feels, oh my God, I really want this, right? So if you look at our social media,
I have to say your social media page is probably the best we've seen for any company. Like, today when I saw it, it's a little short of 200,000 followers. And I think it's a shame people are missing out. It should be more than 200 million, literally. Like, people can learn so much about design and aesthetics just by following your page. It's so good.
I think we have a great team and they do a great job of doing it. But I think just coming back to that, I think it's just taking, how do you take a carpet and put it in a very different context, right? If you saw the tennis campaign,
Correct.
The idea was to push antique carpets and traditional carpets. And, we said rather than just taking them and just putting them in the homes or, what standard everybody else does, push the boundary to associate it with something which not necessarily you'd immediately think of. And that's how you create a trend. It's not like we're constantly able to do it. It's an effort and you keep trying. You try 10 times and you hit the ball out of the park, hopefully once or twice, and that's good enough.
Do you feel it's also very difficult in the sense it requires a lot more experimentation and capital, and you would actually have a lot more failure than you would have successes, but the successes would give kind of outsized returns. So it's almost like venture capital investing. When you're creating trends, you're essentially putting so much money behind trying different things. And at some point, because your business, I know, has a lot of working capital and inventory issues, do you think then capital plays a big role in whether you're able to experiment?
Absolutely. But also, I always say look at the positive side of it, right? Now, if you created 100 new products, this is special inventory because this is only one of a piece.
Yeah.
Right? So when you look at from a consumer, I'm saying from internally, I'm saying, oh my God, I created 100 pieces and I created 100 experiments which didn't work. From a consumer perspective, he's getting 100 more choices to select from, right? Yes, you have to block capital, but you have to be smart enough that what you're making, at least that 1 or 2 or 10 pieces, there'll be a buyer to buy that, which means that your cost is going to be recovered and it's not a dead end where a lot of your capital is getting blocked and you're never going to recover it.
Okay, so the next follow-up question that comes in is that when you create something, and there may at times not be an immediate buyer.
Correct.
But you have the confidence that at some point this will sell. Now this will immediately in financial terms translate to how much inventory are you willing to keep, which becomes your threshold to say that okay, as long as it doesn't cross this benchmark, I am golden, I have no problem. So from that perspective, do you have a benchmark to say, okay, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and I know it's very industry specific. What is it for a business like yours?
So, we have several segments to our business. One is the more affordable products, the mid product and the high-end product. Now, in the high-end product, even if it's a couple of years, we don't really mind because the trend there is not changing so much in the sense
how would you define high-end? Like what price point would?
Let's say above a 5 lakh.
Okay.
Super fine product, a lot of silk, finer knots and all of that, right? And then there's the mid price and then there's so in the entry affordable segment, we say that
is like 50,000 per piece?
Yeah, under 50,000 a piece.
Okay.
So that we want the product to be selling a few times a year.
And that would be like 3 months inventory or 4 months, 5
Correct,
months?
3 to 4 months.
Okay.
The mid, we would say, is between 6 and 9 months, right? Where, or a year maximum that we want the product to sell. The ultra high end, I mean, in some cases like the antiques or some other things, I mean, you can even say that even if it doesn't sell for 5 years, it's okay because you need that inventory to be able to showing the customer so many options to for the others to sell. So it's the higher end is, I think, is the most difficult in at least our business to sort of crack and do. The more affordable ones are slightly easier, and with a lower price point, it's easy to experiment. The customer is willing to buy it in quickly if you
And
price
in this
something well.
industry, what broadly is the COGS like?
So for us, anywhere typically between 55 and 60%, 55, 58%.
Is the cost of goods sold?
Correct.
Oh, that's really high,
Correct.
isn't it? So, I mean, I thought because it's kind of getting towards luxury, the margins would be much higher than this.
Our industry has a lot of competition. We are the perfect example of a perfect competition industry. So there's a lot of players. So to command a significantly higher price is not very easy in our industry first. Secondly, when we started to retail in India, we said the trend of using carpets was not there. And we said that if we become very expensive, we'll scare a lot of people to start using them. So we kept the prices very reasonable from the very beginning. So we said we'll not give too much discount, to consumers, but keep the pricing very sharp. And over the last few years, especially since COVID, we've not increased our pricing, but said, okay, now we're not going to give any discount, and we only run a sale a year, so that there's very high value to the customer. And I think that strategy overall has worked very well, except some customers who are shopping discounts more than a product.
Okay. Now, one tough question, which is also very relevant to today, is how the US has imposed tariffs. And just today, right before we got to talking, I was reading Mint, and the article which has been published today is how Bhadohi, the carpet capital of India, is practically in shambles and it's crying, and all the carpet manufacturers are literally thinking how many people will even survive in the company this very month because the tariffs have come in. So I'm sure it's impacted your business in some way.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. So
Yes.
what has been the impact, and do you think there is going to be a resolution soon enough? But because that's beyond all of our controls, what are some mitigating factors you are doing which other exporters who are already in this industry can think of emulating?
For most companies like ours, America is a huge market, right? So like today also for me, almost this year we were US last year US was maybe about 55% of my business. Now suddenly you can't take this 55% and go anywhere else and say, okay, I'm going to start selling this in XYZ country and build a huge market out. So obviously we've accelerated our reach outs in other countries and try to see what we can do in those countries. But also we're looking at if this continues for a while, what can we do in the US, to take similar product but make them in slightly lower price point. So something was made at $10, can we make it at $7 so that even after the tariff, the business still continues. So there are other product development strategies that we're thinking so that, because the market is huge in the US, this is for whatever time this will impact the business, it will continue to. But I think whenever the going gets tough, that's the time for even more innovation.
Correct. Now imagine the tariffs get resolved and someone is really looking at entering the US market today. Do you think the US market in itself has so many players already that for anyone starting today, you would say, don't start with the US. You will meet with a lot of competition. There will be players like Jaipur Rugs, almost practically everyone else who's already innovated on so many products who are entering it. Capture something else. Do you think that's sane advice, or no, the US market is so big that it's still open ample opportunity for more players to keep trying for the US before anyone
No,
else?
I mean, US is US and you can't beat.
Yeah.
I don't think any market I see getting close to the US market anytime soon in the near future. I mean, the consumption is absolutely bonkers. They have the right customer to buy any type of product that you make. So I would definitely go to the US even if I started something new today. What will take you, let's say in 10 years, if you focused only on Europe, the scale you will build versus if you focus only on the US, the scale you will build will be very different. So if you're looking for scale, I think you can't ignore US as a market. I don't see any close alternative. Yeah.
So you would say in your total business, 55% till last year was the US only?
Absolutely. I mean,
And all other 50 plus countries are like domestic business, I'm assuming, would be 25-30%.
correct.
So all other 50 plus countries are practically just about 20% or so.
Exactly. Exactly.
So imagine if someone picks the US and wants to enter, the very obvious idea would be go to a California, go to a New York, or go to a Texas, I would assume. Maybe focus on Seattle, if at all. Apart from this, like even when you look at US as a market, do you see pockets which are high growth where there is low competition? And are there any cities or districts you've identified to say, okay, this is where we see the next layer of growth happening?
I mean, all the cities you mentioned, I would say go later. The first place I would recommend somebody to go is to go on the south side. So
Florida?
Texas and Florida are, I think, the biggest hubs in the US. So
Yeah.
because of oil, IT, Miami becoming almost like this capital where everybody wants to live
Yeah.
and billionaires want to come is bustling. I mean, I think Miami, we say, is the next New York.
Yeah.
But I also feel it's also to do with your product, right? And who you're trying to sell. So US, unlike many other markets, is very organized. So you have very large players on the one hand, right? So you have companies like the Costco's and the Walmarts, and there are many big box stores which drive significant volume business. Then you have the second type where it's family run or capital invested businesses who have another layer of many large stores. Then you have the mom and pop stores. Then you have specialty stores. Then you have individual people. So depending upon what product you are and what you're targeting, I think there are many channels in the US that you can target, and there are many wholesalers. Like we have a wholesale company in the US. If you're making carpets, we do import from many other manufacturers in the wholesale arm in the US.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And in Texas, you would say Dallas is the place or Houston is the place. Do you have identified cities?
Yeah, Houston, Dallas, and some of the smaller cities are also actually growing significantly well. So a city like Austin, suddenly I think some of the big IT firms open their big corporate offices there. The cities have changed. I mean, their buying capacities have changed. The property prices have changed in these cities. So overall, I think Texas, I would say there are about 5 to 8 cities just in Texas. And then Florida again, I think, is absolutely incredible.
Wonderful. The government of India has built this entire scheme called One District, One Product, which they call ODOP, where they've identified unique products from different districts and states of India to say that if someone wants to build a brand here and sell it to foreign countries, each state has come up with its own set of schemes, which they've published to say we will give some kind of interest subsidy or some kind of support in helping you market your products internationally. Have you, in your experience, being around Jaipur or meeting a lot of your customers who come here to buy and select products, have you seen that they're also looking for certain other products from India, which you don't provide, which is an easy gap or a white space that you see that, okay, if someone were to make a trustworthy brand here, this can really go down the Jaipur Rugs route and make a big global brand supplying to 60 countries?
No, I think there is tremendous opportunity. So we get a lot of these. My business is the home business. And especially since COVID, the home business has almost become like a fashion business. So we call it home fashion now, right? Because somebody wants to change their sofa earlier it was every 20 years, now they want to change it every 2 years. The cycle has become so much faster, which means we have to keep developing a lot of new products. The huge white space I see in India is taking some of our traditional crafts. So taking, from the traditional embroideries to, any type of craft and modernizing it. If today Jaipur Rugs was still making those traditional looking carpets, we would be probably not even 20%, 25% of the size we are today. What we did was we took a craft which comes from hundreds of years ago, and we kept the craft as it is, but we've used very modern designs. So today, if you look at all our designs, you'll see we have traditional, modern, we've used a lot of color and flavor. And I think there are at least 40, 50 Indian crafts where this is possible.
When you say crafts, are you saying something like a blue pottery from Jaipur?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Blue pottery, you take stone carving, I mean, today, the demand for just taking a marble maybe and carving, making products out of it is humongous.
And people see that for so long when they go to say an Agra or something and everyone's trying to sell that little miniature Taj Mahal, right?
Exactly.
But those kind of things are in demand now in international markets.
Yeah, imagine making, instead of a Taj Mahal, an Eiffel Tower and selling it in Paris. It'll sell because right now they're using plastic. I think we just have to separate the craft and the opportunity. When you take the craft and say, we're not pushing the limits of innovating in the craft much, and that's where I think there's a huge opportunity. So I think in the next, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's something that we aspire to do as a brand, is to take other crafts and completely take a modern take on them. And I think I would not be surprised if that business is between 20 and 50,000 crores just to begin with.
So I'm just thinking a formula which could be something like blue pottery Russian dolls. Would not exist in Russia. They understand Russian dolls, and suddenly it becomes like a high fashion item that I've got one which got made in Jaipur from India in this blue pottery design. So you're almost saying collaborating a product which is Western but putting an Indian craft onto it, and that is where the opportunity is.
Absolutely. Make something which is so cool. You take something which is old but make it, modernize it and make it cool. And I think and today actually people are looking for those things. Today when I build my home, I'm looking for something that is so cool that I can put in my home and I can tell everybody, see, I have this, right?
Yeah.
And these are the things where I say that, see, this is hand stitched and this was made by an artisan, and this is a technique that exists from 300-400 years ago, but this is the most contemporary version of this. So we see this happening a little bit in the art space, but there's a huge opportunity to commercialize this and take it ahead. Like even just clay, just marble. I mean, to me, there is opportunity everywhere. So I'm a optimist and an opportunist, and I think that even if you have sand, you can make products out of it and sell. So
I was reading you supply to 60 countries. So my biggest question, or what I want to learn from you, is exactly how did you go about cracking the international market? Which country did you start with, and how did you kind of expand to get to this number of 60?
So, when we started we were only selling to the US earlier. So our 100% business came from the United States. And then we started to do a research on seeing which are the wealthiest countries. And then out of those, we shortlisted 25. And we said, okay, let's see how we can actively go behind these 25 countries. And then we started to, in those countries, started to find who were the carpet stores that we supply to, which are the furniture stores that we can supply to. And then there we started to email them, we started to make calls to them. We started to go to exhibitions where we thought that these buyers would come. And then a lot of online digital tools and other strategies combining to kind of focus on those countries that we wanted to enter into.
Okay, so what are the top 5 after, say, the US, UK, UAE, which is almost everyone's aspiration? Are there some underrated names, such as I would think maybe the Netherlands would have some demand, but that's only my best guess. Or say the Nordic countries, because they're kind of cold and they have the money. So that would be my best guess. But do you have any such names that you would recommend others can go after?
When we started to research, what was very interesting was that there were established markets. The other was a amazing category of markets that are growing at a very high rate. So when you have markets which are growing at very high rate, the consumption is increasing drastically, right? And there are a lot of new players coming. So it's easy to enter those markets. So not only we went after legacy big markets, but in our list, we also took countries where we felt that the growth rate was so high that even if the market was small today, if we start to work in those, eventually we'll grow the business significantly. So to give you an example, we started with Turkey. Everybody says Turkey makes carpets.
Correct.
And they did at that point. But we started to sell in Turkey because we looked at the numbers, and Turkey was a very high growth market back in the, let's say, early 2010s. And we did significantly well there. We built an amazing business in Turkey until one day they decided to put a 50% tariff, how the US has recently done. The other country we found was China. So we saw that China was growing aggressively. And everybody talks about actually buying from China. But we realized that China in itself, like India, is a huge market. So we started to explore what can we do to enter the Chinese market. We found a local partner who we trusted, who was helping us source. So a guy who was helping us source, we made him almost our sales agent there. And he started to sell, and we saw amazing results from China. So from an absolute size, if I do a research, China would never come in the carpet consuming countries. But today, when you look at my business, I bring significant business from China because we're not only focusing on big countries, but countries like China, Indonesia, also African countries, Australia, which are relatively not as big as some of the European or the American countries, but they're very high growth.
Okay. I also want to understand if you supply to Africa. And the reason I ask that question is because I feel it's still an untapped market. It's complex because it's still 52 plus countries, as I would imagine. And people in Africa don't really have the willingness to pay, or they don't really have the pocket to spend on these things. And it's very, I would say, low per capita income. So it's also not very aspirational. So are there any countries in Africa that you think have bust this myth or this perception that Indian companies carry, where you would say it's a great place for you to enter, be it like a South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, if I may?
Oh, absolutely. I think for us, if I look at 10 years from now, I think a huge percentage of our business is going to be coming from Africa. If you read the statistics, I think in 10 or 20 years, 75% of the babies that are going to be
Will be in Africa.
in Africa. I mean, imagine that. It's a crazy number.
Yeah.
So the amount of, also Africa is going through a tremendous change, and it's getting much more wealthier than it ever has been. And I think that is going to continue. And what has happened is, because of that, the percentage of rich Africans is growing significantly. Today, I don't think any brand can ignore the African market. A lot of the African buying now happens in the Middle East or Europe or London. So a lot of these rich Africans today end up going. But as the market expands, a lot of the domestic consumption would start, right? So I think you named some of the right countries. I would add Morocco to the list.
Sure. So I remember when we were having one such conversation with a sari brand, and they are present in several countries, and of course their target customer is essentially the Indian diaspora living there. So when I said, how do you decide on exactly which city or which location to enter into, because they do have a lot of offline presence, quite like yourself, they said our parameters are, we try to look at where is it that the maximum Indian community lives. We try and find, is there a temple, and is there like an Indian store or an Indian market, just to be able to figure out where is it that most Indians keep collecting and where do they buy from. And then that market for us ends up being the first place that we go and try to see if we can get like a vacant property where we can set up store. But what I'm hearing from you is a lot of your buyers are not necessarily Indian diaspora buyers.
Correct.
But you do have offline presence in a number of countries?
Yeah, so in Africa, we sell to retailer stores. So essentially, we sell our product and then they sell ahead, essentially, to their consumers.
Okay.
Our own stores are only in Dubai, London, Milan, and Singapore.
Okay.
And then we have 3 franchise stores in China and 1 in Russia.
Okay. So in the places that you have your stores, like Dubai, London, Milan, and Singapore, has there been a playbook for you to see where should you open the store? Or has it been more linked to, let's go to an established market which already has sufficient footfall, let's look at the revenue that our competitors or people in a similar industry are doing in this market, and then take a bet on taking that lease? Because I would assume in a lot of these markets, even the lease terms are almost 5 years, 6 years, and you don't want to take on that commitment without really doing your market research.
Correct. I mean, so the first store we opened was Milan.
Okay.
And we did Milan because Milan, for the home industry, is the fashion capital. So we said, okay, let's go to where all the rich, uber luxury people, the designers, and everybody's coming. That's like the hotspot of our industry. So that's why we chose Milan.
So Milan was first, and then you moved on to London?
Then we started Dubai.
Okay.
Then Dubai, actually, I think, like the sari example, we realized that there was a lot of Indians there.
Yeah.
Also, secondly, we saw that the highest home growth rate of millionaires was there, right? So there were a lot of millionaires coming, building beautiful homes. So we said, okay, that's the perfect market, because even if the market is not as large, but the growth rate, as I said, was very high of Dubai, with all the golden visa and everything else that they'd done.
Okay. In terms of newer markets, are there any new countries that you're going after now, you're evaluating right now? And while you navigate those countries, that could be a learning for others to say that, okay, if they've done their research, maybe we should also look into these countries specifically.
Yes, we're very actively looking at Korea.
Okay.
I think it's a great market and it's extremely underserved. Indonesia is another one. Slightly more difficult to get in because they have a slightly closed economy in terms of foreigners or foreign product coming in. but I think it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years a huge market. And then some African countries, as you I think pointed out earlier.
Which one? So you said Morocco is something.
Yeah, we're looking at Morocco, Nigeria, and Kenya.
Okay. And when you do, do you have like a clear idea on a playbook to say that you want to find a partner or a store which is already selling it offline and you want to place your products there and test the market? Or for any of these markets, are you thinking that it's about time we're at that scale where we might as well go and own our store ourselves so that we can own the narrative and create something like we did in Dubai, in a Korea again?
Correct. So, I mean, going to any country requires a lot of capital. Fortunately or unfortunately, we're still family funded, right? So,
Yeah.
we don't have any external capital. So, we have to be slightly slow in our decisions and we have to take steps very, rightfully that we don't make a very large mistake. So, from that perspective, what we do is in these markets, we sort of go and see, can we start doing trade? Can we start making our brand popular? Can we start having these guys come to any of our other stores? And start doing the commerce. And wherever we feel the ease of doing business is very high, as I said, like Indonesia, I would love to open a store tomorrow. The challenge there is that it's not very easy to do business for a foreign company to go there immediately and set up business and start doing. So I think that there are both sides to it, how good a market is and how easy it is to do business in that market.
And do you have a thesis on Saudi as well? The reason I ask is because everyone's hearing constantly about how much investment is going in there and how they want to build the best of houses and get everyone, all the millionaires and billionaires of the world to come to Saudi. But at the same time, the cost to set up an entity in Saudi is almost 4 to 5 times more expensive than doing business in the UAE. The UAE is quite accessible. Have you entered the market yet? Are you considering?
We are considering. The interesting thing to note though is that a lot of the Saudi buying is actually happening in Dubai. So I think the first thing I would say is start with Dubai, because not only there's a domestic consumption there, but you get all the Middle Eastern countries. It's like the hot spot for any company to come and sort of source from or buy from. And it's very easy to do business in Dubai, even though it's become very expensive over the last many years. But I think there's still a lot of room left to grow there.
I also saw on your, I think, website or somewhere I was reading that you've done some business with Russia, or you continue to do business with Russia, which is very interesting because I've heard from a lot of people, no personal experience of trade with Russia or anything, but I've heard from a lot of people that Russia is so pro-India that they are very open to Indian brands coming and selling them, because there's not a lot of such brand-related domestic production happening in Russia. But at the same time, the scare is that if you do too much business with Russia, maybe your American buyers feel like you are at a risk buying from one such Indian company. Do you think the perception is bigger than the reality here, and one should definitely go and look at the Russian market?
Russian market for us has been amazing. I have never heard an American customer saying if we do business with Russia, they'll not do business with us. So fortunately, we've never seen that. The first time actually what happened was in an exhibition. There was a Russian customer who came to India and very scaredly he's coming and buying product from us. And he bought some $25,000 worth of carpets, and immediately he was starting to take out money, cash, dollars, and giving to me. And I was so scared because in our industry, we don't see cash, right? Because it's mostly. So immediately I called my accounts guy. I said, somebody is giving cash. What do we do? So he said, let me call the bank and see if they will take a deposit. We called the bank and bank said, yeah, you can deposit. So I was very happy. They said, just take your passport copy. And this was the first instance, and $25,000. So obviously we took that money, and that's when we started to understand the Russian market, because in most markets, in the American market, a customer would come and say, please give me credit. The Russian market, on the other hand, says, please take money and please give me product, right? So we started to actively then market in the Russian market. I visited Russia, a few times.
And Moscow, St. Petersburg, elsewhere.
Correct. So Moscow is where all the wholesalers were sitting.
Okay.
And the big daddies, let's say, were sitting where they have a brand in Moscow and then they have stores everywhere around Russia. So what we've always tried to do is see who are the top 2-3 players and can we really go deep with one or two, and that helps us cover the market to quite an extent. And that's what we did in Russia, and we were very successful. And now we actually have a franchise partner also in Samara who sells the Jaipur Rugs brand in Russia.
Okay, so they have a store by the name of Jaipur Rugs, and it's a franchise partner of your company.
Absolutely.
And whatever, do they buy inventory from you and then sell, or do you stock inventory with them and they give you like a percentage on sale basis?
No, we only sell. So
Okay.
we don't give international consignment at all.
But does a franchise partner also mean then it's an exclusive arrangement and they don't get other brands on?
Correct.
Okay.
So they are not allowed to have any other carpet brand. But in that region, we will not give Jaipur Rugs to any other player also. Works both ways. Yeah.
So imagine someone today who wants to enter the Russian market. What would you say is the playbook? Where should they start? Is there a city they should go to? Are there certain emails they should write to certain key people depending on the category? Or are there certain exhibitions? What do you think will be the highest impact, highest ROI on the effort that they're making? And some tips on how the Russians are slightly different, apart from, of course, paying in cash, which is amazing, which could help build trust.
No, great question. I mean, today Russians are also very amenable to come and work with Indians. I think there's they enjoy India. India is looked as a positive, favorable country, to travel, to source from. But I think in India's mind, a lot of us fear going to Russia. I don't know why that is. But I think I remember the first time I also went there, it was a little scary. You wouldn't want to travel alone.
I mean, as China is intimidating for someone who's never been.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. A lot of that has changed today, right? These countries have become a lot more global today. Moscow is by far the biggest hub spot of Russia. So if you're in any business, my assumption would be that Moscow is where you need to go. Typically, as I said earlier also, what I would do is search and see who are the players in the market, email them, call them before going to make appointments. And if there's an exhibition happening, I'd probably go that time, because what happens is when you go there and if they have stands or they're visiting, the chances of meeting them are higher. Yeah. So there's a lot of meet and greet happening that time during those times. So yeah, I mean, and Russians overall are very easy to meet, right? It's like how, in some European countries, taking an appointment itself is difficult. Russians are like Indians, where when you call them and say, I'm coming to the city, it's like, yeah, please come into my store whenever you'd like. They're not very difficult people to meet and do business with, So yeah, I think it's a great market.
Do you have any experience of trading with, say, in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan? And the reason I'm thinking is because the same theory could kind of apply to these smaller countries, but I don't know about the willingness to pay of these economies yet.
No, we work with actually almost all of these countries.
Yeah?
Yeah. So our goal is actually to work with carpet stores in these regions.
Okay.
And we have such a compelling proposition in terms of our product that when they come and they see and they love it, and they like, they would love to add it to the store. In some countries, the only challenge is like, for example, Iran or some of the other ones, where they absolutely want the product, but the country itself has banned importing of a product, right? In the carpet world, there are not too many countries that are manufacturing carpets, right? So we only typically Iran, India, Pakistan and Afghanistan are the core producers of carpets today, and let's add Nepal to some extent. China, Turkey, and some of these other countries which were huge producers no longer make the handmade carpets because it's become very expensive to make there. So earlier, 20 years ago, China was a competition to India, which is not the case today. So the right to win that India has is very high today. It's been highest that we've ever seen.
Yeah. Do you have any experience in South America also?
We do a lot of business in South America.
Yeah. Which countries and how is that?
So Brazil is the trickiest out of all because they have a huge import tax. So most of our Brazilian customers end up importing in some other country and then somehow managing to take in. So the biggest challenge for Indian goods in South America is the tariffs or the import duties that they've levied on. And then Chile and Argentina are the next two that we work with.
And was it the same process that helped you crack it? It's almost like, whichever continent or country I ask you, you've already done business. So I'm just wondering, you're sitting with a map in your office and thinking which one's left out and let's go after this
We were doing that at one point, where we said, put a map and then start putting out which ones we're not working in. I was obsessed with saying, let's enter 100 countries. But, I think what I've realized is also, I'm just remembering this now, that a lot of these customers, it was not that we went to them, they came to us. So in these countries, they're also looking to source products. So we've, over the last many years, done a lot of exhibitions, abroad, India. And we met a lot of these buyers in these exhibitions, or we met a lot of these customers online where they've seen our website or they've seen our social media and they've written to us that, we're coming to India and would like to come and see and source product from you.
But there must have been like some inflection point where a lot of this inbound would have come in, right? Like, so I'd want to understand how much time of outbound does it really take to get to such an inflection point? Because for a lot of people who want to start a business and want to do exports, I think the very idea of putting, 8 to 10 lakhs on going for a couple of exhibitions internationally and still not being sure of whether they'll find the right kind of buyer or not, who will be ready to buy. Plus, there's of course cost in carrying your inventory and bringing it back. The very idea is so intimidating, people are unable to start, and a lot of them just want to keep trying online, secure some orders, and then utilize that money to kind of go and do exhibitions and meet people personally. Do you think that approach is incorrect and going to exhibitions will really improve chances? If you had to start today, how would you do it? Imagine there was no Jaipur Rugs social media, there is no such store, nothing, and you are starting today. How would you do it?
Well, see, I think what has happened over the last 10, 15 years, the exhibitions have become too many. So earlier, we used to have 1 or 2 exhibitions where all the buyers were coming. So you go to that exhibition, and if you had good product, you were guaranteed to get business. Today, that's changed significantly. Today, these exhibitions have scaled down so much because a carpet exhibition, which used to happen in Hanover, which brought the whole world, now all their existence is in question actually today.
Really?
And we don't even know if they're going to happen. Yeah, they've cancelled for next year. So there's smaller exhibitions happening in Frankfurt and Spain and Italy and Paris and in London. So today it's become slightly more difficult than before to do business, right? Because the number of exhibitions has just tremendously gone up. So what I would, if I were to start a business today, I think what I would probably do is first create a very unique offering. That's the product is very important, because if you're going with what everybody else is doing and what's available already out there so much, it's going to be very difficult for you to go. With a unique product, I think digital is the first, and you rightly said, export is a patience game. I think if you're expecting that you write 100 emails and from tomorrow or in a week you start bringing a lot of business, God bless, if you're lucky that happens. But my assumption is that your first year, even if you're able to bring that 5, 10, 20 lakh, depending upon your business, if you still start sampling, you reach a stage where you're communicating, you reach a stage where the customer is appreciating your product, that is great. The next year is when, you start actually doing some business, and then it incrementally grows from there. So I think exports is not an industry where you come in and say, okay, first year I did 10 crores and next year I'm in 50 crores and then 500 crores, Jaipur Rugs has taken decades to build. And it requires a lot of working capital also, right? So it's, businesses like ours. Unless you
because the lead times for delivery and all are
the production
high.
time is very high, and so the lead time is very high, which means that your capital is blocked for a very long time. So to churn the product from the time you source the raw material till the time you sell and get the money is a very long cycle.
Thank you, Yogesh. I think this has been an amazing masterclass. I don't think I've ever met someone who supplies to 60 countries and has been able to build this over the past 10 years. I think most of your international business has happened over the past decade.
I joined 2006. So
okay,
2007
so 2 decades.
I started to push.
Wow, it's amazing. I think lots of learnings for people, and I would hope in the edit we can bring it all together, crunch it down into most actionable insights for everyone who's been watching. And thank you so much for making the time and having us here.
I hope it's useful.
100%. Whenever people complain that their business has a lot of competition, it's more often than not a problem where they are selling a commodity and not a unique item that could evoke customer delight. Over the years, Jaipur has evolved into quite the art capital of India. And I would urge anyone building a consumer brand to come here and learn how true Indian designs are being extended to have an international appeal. Do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another Founder's Office with Sarthak Ahuja.